Good evening and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast. It is the month of August, month number 8 of the year 2021. 8 is my favorite number, so I'm happy to be here. Actually, 12 is my favorite number, but 8 is my second favorite number. I'm Illeagle 86. The 8 is in my name, so I do like it quite a bit. I got Nerdbomber here. Nerdbomber, you technically have a 3 in your name. Is there...
Not anymore. You know, those are back
you took the 3 out?
Nerdbomber.com days. I took the 3 out because you know what? There's only one of me, not 3. But
Oh.
We can all dream though.
Oh.
Technic used to have a 1 at the end of his name. I guess in advance of like he wanted to distinguish himself from Technic too. Was that the idea? Or
Technic
were you number 1? Was
Technic blank was already taken.
I think he had dreams of cloning himself, so he wanted to differentiate, but then those dreams fell apart.
Well, no, Technic 1 is technically the
to.
second Technic because Technic was taken.
Oh, I see. So, well, but at that point, just pick any number. 1 is the most boring number.
Yeah, but it tricks you into thinking that I'm the OG.
1 is the loneliest number.
Fair point. You could go for the 3 for the E too if you wanted. If you could steal Nerdbomber's thing, given that she's given it up. I could do that too. I could use 2 3s. I could use a bunch of 1s. My whole name could be numbers basically. I should look into that. But for now, I'm not going to. I'm gonna do a podcast. It's August. We have some more news for you this week. We're gonna be talking about some Disney contractual issues. We're gonna get into that. I'm sure you've heard about it at this point. It's been pretty high profile. We have to talk about the Annapurna Interactive showcase as well. So that's pretty exciting. There is a third topic. Marvel's What If. We've talked about it a few times on the show before. We just got a new trailer in the past week. And we're gonna talk about What If. We're gonna talk about what might be shown on the show as an alternate reality, how it might connect to the MCU and all of its larger gears that are turning. So we'll get into that as well. But before we get into all the news, how you guys doing? We just jumped right into number conversation. I don't know how you guys are doing. Tell me, give me the update.
I am good. Thank you for asking.
I'm a little sad, honestly, from my standpoint. Like, we hit August, and that means that's pretty much the last month of summer, and I'm not ready to let go yet.
You're killing my vibe, maybe everybody's vibe.
Sorry.
So I'm gonna need you to. September's a great month. Like, let's forget about August for a second. Let's look ahead. When I was a kid, I loved back to school. Now, I might have been the only kid on earth who liked back to school, but I
didn't like going back to school, but school supply shopping was dope.
Yeah, you got new binders. I mean, come on. That's the height of luxury as a kid.
And
new
pencils,
binders,
mechanical pencils, pens.
Right.
Well, every year there was a new model of mechanical pencil or pen that would come out, and you had to try different ones to figure out if it would be your new favorite.
Right. Exactly. You get it. We'll have to put this in our good ideas folder, which we now actually have one, by the way. I think we said good ideas folder, put it in our secret segment ideas list. We've never had one, but I think last week or the week before was finally the breaking point where Nerdbomber made us a Discord channel that was put all the secret segment ideas here instead of just saying them. So we're going to do that now. And I think one of them should be back to school. Just talking about our greatest, what was your greatest triumph as a back to school shopping? What was your greatest triumph there? What was your best binder? What was your best revelation? Did you get any cool book covers? Did you do the grocery bags and then draw designs on them? There's all kinds of stuff we can get into there. We're not going to do that now, but for now, it's August. It's still really hot, and there's still some news to dive right into. So let's talk about Black Widow, because we talked about, I think we've both now, all 3 of us have talked about Black Widow. We've all seen it. And there are contractual issues. I'm sure most people have heard that ScarJo is a little peeved because she's not getting those dollars. Essentially, the idea here is that I think the idea behind the lawsuit is that because Black Widow didn't get a theatrical release, and it got this premiere access release on Disney Plus in conjunction with the theatrical release, she's losing money because she's getting, I guess, a cut of the profits, which I don't even know if that's particularly common in actors' contracts. I think that's not super often done. But in any case, she's feeling shortchanged. And Disney, I don't know if you guys saw it, Disney kind of snapped back. Did you see the Disney snap back? No one snaps back like Disney. I mean, they're huge. I don't want to say what the actual number is, both because it's not in front of me and because that seems tacky, but they were like, hey, just so you know, you've already made this much money from the movie. Do you really need more? That was like kind of the premise of their clap pack.
Which is wild to me because like
they have more money than
yeah, like they own.
She could easily reply with the same comment.
Right. It would probably have a lot more bearing. For all I know, she did do that. Disney did say, I'm quoting from the statement now, they referred to Johansson as having callous disregard for the pandemic, which I don't know, man. That seems... I don't want to say I'm on Scarlett Johansson's side because there's a lot of nuance to be kind of delved into here. But another piece of news here is that she's not the only actor who has been considering lawsuits. I think I heard at some point Emma Stone was considering one because of Cruella.
Emily Blunt.
Possibly other actors. Emily Blunt, okay.
With Jungle Cruise, I believe, which just came
which
out.
Which was this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Have not watched that one yet. I don't know if you guys have.
No, not yet.
I suppose I would know because we shared Disney Plus account and you didn't.
That one just didn't pique my interest. Yeah. I figured that one I can wait on, you know? Like sometimes there are movies you need to see now and it's worth the $30. That just wasn't one of them. I'm going to enjoy it just as much in 6 months.
Yeah, so what typically happens, I think I mentioned this on the show before, but whenever, like when Mulan came out, Cruella, Black Widow, Nerdbomber messages me because we shared a Disney Plus account and I'm the keeper of the keys. She's like, hey, just order this and we'll pay you. And it's a great system. And they did not do that for Jungle Cruise. I don't really have interest in seeing Jungle Cruise either. But, you know, yeah, Emily Blunt, Emma Stone. I guess I'm reading this. I have an article in front of me from Screen Rant. I guess, you know, another company that has a similar sort of thing going on is Warner Brothers and HBO Max, because you may recall they moved their entire 2021 slate into same day HBO Max releases and theatrical releases kind of concurrently. They actually reworked contracts with a lot of their actors. Denzel Washington in The Little Things, Gal Gadot as well for Wonder Woman, of course.
And that's the smart thing to do. Honestly.
Yeah. Everybody wins there because there's no bad PR, right? This is just bad PR for everybody.
I'm on, Scarlett Johansson's side simply because the highly paid lawyers at Disney neglected to say, maybe we should bake something into their contract that protects us. So, yeah, good on them. Take advantage of the throw over the corporate overlord and take advantage of a flawed contract. Absolutely.
And I get it. I can see if the contract structure wasn't such that her payout was affected by the box office numbers. If she was just getting a flat rate and then suddenly she came back and she was like, this is not fair, you should pay me more because this went on streaming concurrently. I could see where Disney would have a leg to stand on here, but they did, like Technic said, neglect to take into account that this was a clause in the contract and they basically cut her profit. And yeah, it was for a decent reason because the pandemic is preventing a lot of people from seeing things in person. But they just, you need to do a better job. From a legal standpoint, you just need to do a better job.
# fight the power.
We're in uncharted waters here with the pandemic, without a doubt. But you need to do what HBO did. And when Disney announced, we're going to move certain movies to Premier Access, that was when they should have approached Scarlett Johansson and anyone else, any of their bigger talents, and been like, okay, let's work together. Let's work out how do we need to restructure this so that everybody is happy? Because there's certainly a scenario in which everybody is happy. Are they as happy as if the movie came out in theaters and everyone was healthy and it made $1 jillion? No, of course not. But I also don't think Black Widow would have made $1 jillion. I don't know. There's no way to know this. But I don't know how much the pandemic hurt it. It's tricky for me because I have as I've been mentioned on the show, a not so great opinion of that movie. But there's a way to dollars and cents back this out, right? I mean how much does it cost on Premier Access? It's $30. It does well. It did well overseas still, I think. I mean, that's where it made most of its money. One of the things that we're neglecting to think about, though, is the amount of people who see Marvel movies multiple times in theaters. And when you have people at home paying that one-time fee, they want to watch it again, they're not paying again. You know what I mean? I remember, and granted, this was not on the same level as Endgame for obvious reasons. Endgame was the culmination of a decade of people's lives, and this definitely was not. But I mean, Endgame, I had some friends who went and saw it literally every weekend for 4 weeks in a row
because they just needed to sit and let it sink in. And again, this isn't the
Right.
same type of movie, but I mean, people did it with Black Panther, people did it with Wonder Woman. People get excited about these characters and they do go to the movies multiple times to see them. So like in that aspect, I can kind of get it, because I think Black Widow actually did really well the first week that it released, but then like if I'm remembering correctly, like
Yeah.
the next weekend, didn't it get ousted almost immediately by Space Jam or something like that? Which
Well, I think it
what
had a
movie to oust
record-breaking.
you.
Yeah, I think it had like a record-breaking pandemic opening, which like again isn't saying much, but like I think it was the best opening during the pandemic. But that's another thing I wanted to get to with this is I think Scarlett Johansson has a leg to stand on, if only because this movie was hobbled from the beginning. Pandemic aside, she got screwed. She wanted to make this movie for a long time, and this movie should have been made back when it made chronological sense. That's kind of why I feel like, and like I said when I gave my mini review of this movie, the fact that it didn't come out 4 years ago or 5 years ago hobbled it from the start and made people, even moving outside the movie itself, it made people not want to see it because they know what happens to her. Yeah, there are some things you can do that have import for later, but it's about the character. You mentioned Black Widow, people saw it a million times. Wonder Woman, people saw it a million times. It's because of the character and what the character means. People like Black Widow, but they know what happens to her, so they're not going to want to go and see this movie multiple times in the same way that you would for the movies that you mentioned. So for that reason, the lawsuit aside, honestly, I'm team Scarlett Johansson because she got screwed. And, Disney should be able to foot the bill. I don't know what would make her happy. I don't even know exactly what she's asking for in the lawsuit. I'm sure she's asking for some higher percentage of the cut. And Disney should just give it to her because this is horrible PR. It's really bad PR. I would imagine most people are on Scarlett Johansson's side. I don't know. Technic, you said you're team ScarJo, right?
Yes. And it's really just
Yeah.
for the matter of down with corporate America.
Right.
Got a rebel over
Tear
here.
it all down.
Tear it all down.
Yeah, a bit of an anarchist. So we want you to weigh in as well, dear listener. Head over to Twitter at Online Warriors 1. There's one on the end of that too. That's our main show account at OW86, at OW Technic, at OW Nerdbomber. Let us know. Are you team ScarJo? Are you team Disney? Are you team?
Plus,
I don't know. There's not really a third party.
you can't forget,
here. Those are your options.
even the whole waiting this long to make this movie aside, Disney's just kind of treated her character kind of strangely through the evolution of the character.
Yeah.
Just being an uncomfortable sex symbol initially, and then realizing, oh, this probably is wrong, which it was, but it games, down with them.
The press junkets, if you've never watched, Disney and the MCU is known for these big press junkets, right? Where they go and they take a certain subset of the Endgame cast and they put them all in a room, and it's like Scarlett Johansson, Chris Evans, Don Cheadle, and I don't know, Mark Ruffalo. And they'll be like, Chris, what was your greatest influence in playing Captain America? And he's like, oh, yada, yada, yada. He mentions some philosopher or whatever. Who cares?
What are you wearing tonight?
Then they go to Scarlett Johansson. They're like, did you wear underwear under the suit? And there's videos where you can see her being understandably upset and being like, why aren't you asking me the questions you're asking these? And I think Disney, there's some of that I think may be baggage with the Black Widow character, but at the same time, Disney and the MCU have also smartened up in terms of, I think, how they approach female characters in these MCU movies. And yeah, Scarlett Johansson was the trailblazer and she got short shrift for a lot of it. So yeah, like I said, then there's a lot. This lawsuit may have been a long time coming, and it may just be rightfully a good way for Scarlett Johansson to be like, yo, you guys suck and you've sucked this whole time. And maybe you should consider sucking less, and so I'm going to make this public. So, yeah, let us know if you're Team ScarJo or Team Disney on Twitter. Hashtag Team ScarJo, hashtag Team Disney. I just made those hashtags up. They're probably already taken, but whatever. Use them anyways and tag us. We'll see them. Black Widow. Jungle Cruise is out, too. That was kind of we kind of just glanced off that on this topic, but yeah, feel free to let us know what you thought of that. None of us have seen it. I don't think we have any direct plans to see it. But maybe it's really good. I don't know. Maybe we're not giving it the time of day that we should. Let's stick with Marvel. We're rolling on the Marvel train at this point. Let's talk about What If, because this is, to me, I think we just talked about maybe the ugly side of the MCU. and Disney, let's talk about the really cool side, because we've talked about What If on this show before. I don't know if we've done it in passing or if we've given it the deep dive that we're going to do here, but premise of this show, this is a fully animated show that's going to be on Disney Plus starting August 11th next week. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's what if Captain America wasn't Steve Rogers? What if it was instead Peggy Carter? Apparently, there's also another, what if all the Avengers were zombies? So you should go watch this trailer. This trailer came out the past week, the third trailer for What If, and it runs through a bunch of different scenarios. What if Killmonger saved Tony Stark in the desert at the beginning of the first movie? And they go through all these scenarios, and the coolest thing about it to me, and we can go around the room, the virtual room, and say what the coolest thing is to each of us, but the animation style is cool, but what's particularly cool about it is they are recreating exactly shots from the movies. Like if you watch in particular the Iron Man and Killmonger interaction, until Killmonger shows up, it is exactly what you see in Iron Man 2008, which I think is the coolest thing in the world. They're putting you right back into those places, and then they're changing one little thing, and then they take that and they spin it off and they run with it. But it's such a great pure idea that I'm really, really excited about. And Technic, I'm sure you have a lot to say about this, so I'm going to turn it over to you first. What excites you about it? What upsets you if something upsets you about it? But I imagine you might be excited.
I like what this implies for the multiverse. And hear me out. And it could be a little bit late in the game for them to be doing this. I might have recommended doing this a little bit earlier, but they needed to pump out a bunch of content first so that we can kind of do the What If spin-off of it. And the reason why...
We have the playground set up now.
Right. So now that the playground's set up, what this allows is basically them to pilot all these multiverse characters and sort of get our instantaneous feedback on whether or not we like Captain Carter, for example, as an alternate Captain America. I mean, I like her much better personally. But can they scour Reddit and say, wow, there's a lot of good feedback on this character. Maybe we should segue them into the actual MCU, live action. And they can get that real time from this. And that's really what excites me most of all.
I've never thought about it that way.
We can not only see the same characters we fell in love with initially, but we can see completely new versions of them. And there's a huge exciting part of that.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I've never thought about it that way in terms of it's almost like market research for them on a global scale, right? They put it out at a production scale and they say, okay, do people like the Black Panther Guardians of the Galaxy mashup? And can we pursue that? Can we pursue that with Shuri? Can we take our existing characters? And obviously you can't do exactly the same things that What If is proposing, but there are certain character archetypes that you can put in a fish out of water scenario and see how the audience responds to it. So yeah, that's a cool aspect as well. I want to, Nerdbomber, you will get your chance, but I also want to mention, I want to get your opinion on the voice acting. And granted, this is a trailer, but I want both of you, and I'll go to you first, Nerdbomber. I mean, what did you think of the voice acting in particular?
Some were good.
Did you notice it?
Some were bad.
Yeah.
The obvious one, I think, was Black Panther sounded off. But I mean, you can't.
I thought that for Tony Stark.
It's kind of what do you expect, though? They're not going to get the big stars to come in and do little bits for all of these what if scenarios. You know what I mean? Right. I'm sure they probably could bake it into their contract so that they're contractually obligated to do it. But I don't think anybody is expecting that. So it's going to be jarring for sure, though. And it's going to be kind of like the Avengers video game, kind of jarring to hear a different version of these characters. And especially characters like Killmonger weren't too bad, but the characters like you said, Technic, like Tony Stark, we've spent a decade with him. We've spent a decade with Robert Downey Jr. We know his voice at this point. I could close my eyes. Right. You could play me a clip of 2 words that he says in one of the movies and I would know exactly who it is. And that's not going to be the case with this. But I don't think we can expect that from this either. And it's going to be harder to accept than something like the Avengers game because those were at least completely new, unique character versions. Whereas the art style is trying to make them look exactly like the movies, like you had mentioned, Illeagle.
I do think it was I think you're right. I think Tony Stark was pretty bad. Black Panther was pretty bad. The Thor guy, I was that's either him or it's a world-class Chris Hemsworth. It sounded exactly the same to me. The Thor one did. So I think it was a mixed bag. I think there were a couple that were good. There's a couple Killmonger.
Doctor Strange was good.
Didn't even talk that much. Doctor Strange was good. Like Vision was terrible. Like there were certain ones where I was like, wow. Again, to the point where like with Thor, I was like, did they get Chris Hemsworth that he just like volunteered to do this because it sounded exactly like him? And then there were other ones that weren't so good.
What's
and that can pull you out of it. But
like I'm kind of curious from a voice acting standpoint. Like I feel like there are so many people who do impressions and they do them very well. And I just wonder like how they pick and choose the voice actors who, you know, obviously take on these iconic roles for something like What If. Like, do they look, do you think, for someone who tries to be exact to the role, or do they just find someone who they think fits semi? Like you said, the Thor impression was pretty darn good, but some of the others are meh. So like, do you think these are just voice actors that, you know, they know are highly skilled, or do you think they go out there and like try to find an exact match? Because if they do try to find an exact match, they obviously failed in some of these cases.
I mean, they're probably up against schedule. They were trying to probably find an exact match, but they had to time it right. You know, that said, we really need two characters to be introduced into the MCU, and that's Christopher Walken and Mark Wahlberg. Because then, Illeagle, you and I got a job.
Right, we're right in there. I think it's tough because I think if you try to find an exact sound alike, if you miss, it's way more noticeable than if you just let someone do their own thing. Like they might try both ways. They might just, like you said, look for the best voice talent. And then if a guy comes in for Thor who happens to sound just like Chris Hemsworth, they're like, oh great, we got this. And then if a guy comes in for Tony Stark who sounds nothing like Robert Downey Jr., but who's a great voice actor, they're like, okay, we can do that too. Like I would like to think they don't hem themselves in.
It's more than just an identical voice.
But it is interesting, you know, Technic, you mentioned the multiverse. What are the ties here? Is this trying to is the premise here that Doctor Strange falls into some multiverse and sees a bunch of different realities? Is that that's what I took away from the trailer? Well, the what if
premise was never really supposed to be the multiverse, from what I recall. It was always just supposed to be exactly that, these what if scenarios. But based on the trailer we saw, it appears that it could go either way, right? So I'm excited to see what stance they're taking with this.
I think they use the term multiverse in the trailer, and then there's this watcher guy who talks about how he just observes, he never interferes, and it seems like there may be this kind of anthology thing going on, but it also is going to trace some kind of continuous arc through all the episodes. I don't know how many there are, but it's a very cool idea. It's very interesting. It's a little bit like the Star Wars thing we talked about that I can't remember the name of. It's not Voices, but it's something like that.
Yeah, where they all have their own
thing. Yeah, this is a little bit different because it's really kind of hammering on the use of existing characters, whereas I'm not sure the other one did. But it's a really, really cool idea, a really cool playground. I'm not sure. One thing I'm curious about is we see Spider-Man for like a fraction of a second, and I want to know what
you're immediately thinking about. Toby.
Well, I mean, I'm always thinking about Toby.
I'm thinking about Miles.
Yeah, there's a lot they could do there. There's a lot of different renditions of Spider-Man. I don't know if they're going to go the way they did with the rest of the characters they showed in this trailer, where like Spider-Man is actually Captain Marvel or something. Like they're just going to mash two characters together, basically. Seems like the premise for a lot of these. Or if it's going to be, what if Spider-Man was, lived in the Bronx instead of Queens? Like it's, I don't know how far they're going to take changing him. And we see him for a fraction of a second to the point that we don't even really know what's different. And that was one of the ones where I was like him and like I think Thor too, it's like you don't really see what's different about them, and maybe there's nothing different about them, it's just they're put into a different circumstance that we don't yet understand. But I'm into it. Next week on Disney Plus this comes out. Before we move on to the break, I mean, are there any what if scenarios that we didn't see here that you desperately are wanting to see using existing characters or not? That's a very on the spot question. I'll try to go first. I want more Wong. Wong from Doctor Strange? I want Wong to be Doctor Strange. I want their roles to be reversed. Doctor Strange is too cool. That's the thing I don't like about Doctor Strange. Love the character, but I hate the fact that he's Doctor Strange, when he comes in the movie, like he has this massive ego, right? And his whole plot character arc is like trying to shed that ego. And like he does, but like not all the way, right? He's still like kind of that sly Benedict Cumberbatch kind of smart alecky. No, I don't want that. I want someone like Wong. Instead, I want to see what he would do. I guess that's my what if. What if Wong was the Sorcerer Supreme? What's the deal with that? I don't know if you guys have any potential MCU
I think I have
dithering scenarios.
So mine kind of revolves around Endgame and what would happen if the other half of the Avengers had to figure out what to do with the snap. Like basically trade places. Like the half that we got in Endgame, they were the ones who were snapped away, and we were left with the remaining Avengers. I want to see like how that would have played out. If it would have been different, if we would have had weird time travel craziness, because I really don't think we would, and that would make me happier.
Right.
But I think that would be interesting. I mean, you'd have a different ensemble of characters facing the same kind of challenge. Arguably, I feel like it might be funnier. I feel like the characters that would be left if they swapped places would be a little more lighthearted. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, you're right. Captain America's too stoic, and he's like the leader. And he's just like, we lost everything. It's like, come on, man, let's have fun with it. It's an MCU movie. I on the subject of Endgame too, I think they should take one of the very common meme scenarios and play it out. I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast before, but there was like a meme how to win Endgame where Ant-Man goes up Thanos' butt. Let's see that. Let's see what happens there. You've heard about that, right? I'm not making that up. Did I dream that?
I've never seen that. I feel like we just saw inside the mind of Illeagle what he dreams about at night is Ant-Man crawling in people's butts.
Listeners, this is real. Google it. I'm pretty confident this is real. Ant-Man, someone at the end, after like Infinity War came out, they're like, oh, this is easy. Just have Ant-Man go up Thanos' butt and then like hit the giant button, and like Thanos explodes.
So one of the most dark timelines that I've read about was the Immortal Hulk series. And that's basically where Hulk completely takes over and Bruce basically just gives up. And so what makes Hulk so powerful is he has the morality guiding him, but is also his rage. The angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. And he's ultimately one of the strongest superheroes in the entire MCU. And so what I'd like to see is, and we've seen a lot of different people take on the Hulk mantle, but none of them are quite as strong as Bruce Banner. I'd like to see an original Hulk that matches that strength, but starts off with a suede compass, so to speak. What that would manifest for the entire Avengers.
This is going to make me sound like an absolute moron, but for like half a second when you said suede compass, I literally thought you meant like the material suede and like a compass.
Yeah, like
I was
fuzzy.
just like, what?
Really, really fuzzy. So while you were talking, I did look up. This is called the Thanos Protocol. THANUS protocol to defeat Thanos. It is real. I found a Vox article, which means it's real. Avengers Endgame theory that Ant-Man kills Thanos by going up his butt and expanding. Sorry. I mean, hey, that's a great what if to explore, Marvel. It's not too late. I just want to know what would happen. Would it work?
You've heard it here first, folks. Neither of them listened to my what if. We heard suede compass and
No, I heard
no.
it.
I totally, I totally listened. You want a different Bruce Banner, which I'm there. I guess I like Bruce Banner a lot.
And in the comments, don't say, "Oh, Cho was Hulk." I want an original Hulk that's not Bruce Banner, because it looked like we might have been alluding to one in the trailer. It might have been Hawkeye, and I couldn't tell. So I hope that's what they did. But he's also got the same, moral guidance. I want someone that's a little bit more morally corrupt,
like an Iron Man, who's just like, I'm rich and people don't like me, but I'm a superhero. Yeah, I could see that. Hey, maybe we could get our Pokemon guy Jim Battles to be the new Hulk. How about that? Shout out to Jim Battles. I'm going to shout Jim Battles out every episode now.
By the way, I'm just, in general, I'm always a fan of the beast within sort of struggle. That's why Venom's such an interesting character as well.
Which, incidentally, we're not talking about it today, but there's a new Venom trailer. So go check that out. Venom 2, I should say. Let There Be Carnage. No time for that this week. Maybe we'll talk about it next week or some other time. Who knows? Right now, we are going to transition into our break. But before we do, I would be remiss if we did not shout out our fantastic Patreon producers, Mr. Ben Checkness, Mr. Stephen Keller. Take a bow. You're both going to be coming on the show here pretty soon for your guest spot. We're coming up on that time again, so get hyped for that. As a result of serving as knights on our Patreon, Ben and Steven have producer credits on the show. They get their occasional guest spots. They also get input into the weekly game segment, which I will be hosting this week. Topic to be mentioned later. They also get, of course, access to the monthly secret segment and vlog. There are also Squire level Patreon supporters, which get access to the monthly secret segment and vlog. And the lowly pages get access to the monthly secret segment. For more details on all of the levels of support, you can head over to patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast. Thanks again to Stephen and Ben for helping us to keep the lights on, keep the show running, and producing the show. And good looking out. We're going to take a short break now to shout out one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back to talk about Annapurna. We'll be back to talk about Annapurna in just a minute.
Sun's out and shades are in. Get your home summer ready with custom window treatments from Blinds.com. Get a high-end look without the high-end price with the most popular outdoor shades, and transform your backyard into the perfect weekend oasis with light filtering shades that help block UV rays without obstructing your view. Plus, right now, Blinds.com is offering up to 30% off everything, making it a breeze to upgrade any room in your home, indoors or out. With over 25 million blinds sold and 35,000 five-star reviews, there's a reason why Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window treatments in the world. Whether you do it yourself or have them handle the install from start to finish, Blinds.com makes ordering custom window treatments online easy with free shipping and 100% guaranteed perfect fit. Sunshine and barbecues are in the forecast. Upgrade your backyard and window treatments with Blinds.com today and enjoy your new view all summer long. Go to the link in our show notes to shop up to 35% off site-wide. That's the link in our show notes for up to 35% off site-wide. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Okay, the Annapurna Interactive Showcase. Now, my touch point with Annapurna thus far, I think predominantly is What Remains of Edith Finch, which they actually did briefly talk about. I think it's coming to mobile. That was mentioned in the showcase. We're going to take a different approach to talking about this showcase. It was like 45 minutes long. We don't have a whole lot of time. We'd rather go more into depth in like 3 of the games that were mentioned, so we each picked one. I'm going to let Nerdbomber take the reins here because I think you picked one of the bigger splashes, and we've talked about this title before, I think E3 last year when we talked about it, but this looked particularly exciting. So tell us about Stray.
Okay, so Stray is it looks like an action-adventure game where you basically play a cat who is living in this post-apocalyptic-y type world where you're separated from your family, you have to make it through the city, and the only people who are left are these robotic entities. And you basically have to use your cat skills because it's not like you have like crazy superpowers or anything. You're just a plain old stray cat, and you have to use your skills like pick things up or figure out puzzles to make your way through the city, hopefully find your way out of the city and find your way back to your family. And the interesting thing here too is that eventually at a certain point in the game, so they kind of showed and walked through some of the gameplay of this game, you meet like a little robot AI companion who hooks you up with this device so you can kind of understand and communicate with the robot people that you meet throughout the city. And you also then start getting some powers so you can fight back against these like corrupted little evil creature things that attack you. And the thing that really struck me the most, I mean, besides the fact that there are some very clever puzzle dynamics here, they made this game, even though it's in like a post-apocalyptic, like steampunky, like city-esque world, really kind of hacking cute. Like the interactions between the cat and the robot people that you meet throughout the city as you're wandering, like you can scratch
the song at the end.
Yeah, you can sit down and
the song at the end
listen to a robot play a guitar and just kind of curl up on a pile of pillows next to him. You can get
take a little nap.
Yeah, it's just like it's so cute. And this is a game like a weird mashup of cuteness and steampunkness and like puzzle solving skills that I didn't know I needed, but I definitely do. And this is something that I've kind of had my eye on since we saw it at E3, whether it was last year or the year before. And I'm very, very excited. They said this is coming now in early 2022, I believe, to PS5 and Steam. And I'm
and
here
PS4
for it. And PS4.
Don't worry, PS4. I like myself. This is a game that when I see it, it makes sense to me on a lot of levels, right? I mean, cats are very curious and agile creatures,
And it's a puzzle game.
And it's a puzzle game. What better protagonist for a puzzle game that involves you kind of exploring this derelict steampunk city? It makes a lot of sense to me. It looks, pretty good graphically. It looks like a game that I could really get a lot out of. And like, it reminds me a little bit of Inside. If you ever played that game, or Limbo, both of those are very good. There's a subset of games, and you know, obviously those are not very cheery games, and I'm not sure Stray will be either. It looks more cheery, but like it's very quiet. It's like it cultivates this introspective atmosphere, and there you interact with robots and you listen to songs and stuff, but it seems like it's designed to be a very solitary and kind of closed in experience, which I like a lot about it. And you're a heckin' cat. You're picking up buckets. You're solving puzzles. I love puzzle games. It has looks like kind of vague like platformer elements. I'm very into this.
And like it kind of brings like this different perspective to the world too. You know, this is something that I really enjoyed about like Moss as well, which is a PSVR game. Just the ability to see the world from a different point of view, because there's so many games like, yes, we play as humans or even like crazy fantastical creatures, but something as simple as a cat, like getting down on the ground, seeing things from a completely different perspective. The world may be exactly the same, but it completely changes the experience. And like you said, it kind of leads to this quiet kind of just like contemplative experience that Annapurna is really, really good at.
Your protagonist is an important choice in the video game you're designing, because it has direct bearing on the level of interaction you can even have with the environment. And like, you know, granted, it looks like the cat at some point finds this like little drone thing that allows him to open safes and gather items, do all kinds of things, and the level of interaction then goes up. But at least until that point, you know, you start the game, they show the beginning of the game, you start the game as an injured cat who like, you interact with the environment. That's obviously how you solve puzzles and move from place to place, but there's only so much you can do to interact with it. And again, that kind of mellows the whole thing out a little bit in a way that I think could be really, really cool and very peaceful to work through, in spite of the fact that it might still be a little bit challenging. So very on board with Stray. I'm curious how much it's going to cost. Is this a $60 game? It doesn't really seem super clear to me. I could easily see it being that, but I suppose we'll find out. Technic, what are you bringing to the table here?
So the game I wanted to talk about is Neon White, and one of the things that they opened up with is this game is for the freaks. Absolutely, yes. I would
really drove that point home. Yeah.
I would consider myself a freak because this game looks fantastic. The object of the game is basically you're clearing all the demons out of heaven, and you got to do it really, really fast. It's a speedrunning parkour-esque game similar to Blade Runner, where you use a little bit of sort of a puzzly approach to optimize and improve each run and each level. And that ultimately unlocks more levels and gives you additional maps and such. But also, and this part I could take it or leave it with, it's got a little tiny bit of a dating sim embedded into it.
That surprised the crap out when he's like, you can get these gifts if you use certain cards, and then you can give them to chicks. I was like, what?
I was like, nice.
Came out of nowhere. Yeah.
So I hope that they don't...
That part was weird.
I hope
Can we talk about that part for a second?
They don't make that a large part of the game, because honestly, I can care less about it. I'm more here for the puzzle speed runs to try to get the best time and kill demons, honestly.
I think that's kind of interesting though. So like, I'm not really a dating sim person, but like that's a very heavy element in a lot of JRPGs and, you know, Japanese style games. And obviously there's a lot of inspiration drawn from Japanese games in Neon White, you know what I mean? Like from the art style to the dialogue options and everything like that, and even like the way that the dialogue and such is presented, there's definitely that influence here. So
I'm already gonna be all sweaty though from doing the speed runs. Just saying.
It was just like, it was such a weird, because like when I saw the art style of this game, I'll be honest, I'm not a JRPG guy. I kind of wrote this game off. But then like seeing the gameplay, seeing the potential for optimization, like you said, for the speed runs, I love the way the cards are used. I was like, oh, this is super cool.
And I want to talk about that a little bit more.
We'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that. But I'm not done with this dating sim thing yet, because that was just like the weirdest transition ever. I was like, this is so cool. And he's like, yeah, then you can get this gift and you can give it to a girl, and you know, like, who knows what's going to happen. I was like, what? Like combining that with like the multiple times he was like, this game's for the freaks. I was like, I was into this, and now I'm still into it at large. But I was like, man, that was like a very strange tonal shift there. But yeah, let's get back to the speedrunning part, because that The mechanic there is very cool.
Each card that you get is a weapon, and each weapon you can just shoot, shotgun, fire blast, whatever, or you can throw away the card for some kind of movement power up. So like jumping, double jumping, dashing, what have you. And so as you play the level and sort of become aware of your surroundings and gain experience and such, you sort of know what card combination will give you the best run, and that's a puzzle. You guys know I love puzzles. That's super cool.
Right. It's very and he, the developer mentioned at one point too, it really invites replay, which is super cool because the levels are so quick based on what he showed. You're going to want to, introduce the desire to replay them if you want your game to take more than, 5 minutes to beat, right? So it's cool design. I don't know about the whole heaven thing. Like I think it might be even cooler in a different setting and plot. That part I wasn't super jiving with, but the gameplay itself, I was very, very into.
I almost feel like with this game, so obviously you and I especially, we're very story-driven players, but there are obviously games where story doesn't matter and it's more so about the mechanic. And I would argue, like, for example, Doom is a good example of that. I had a ton of fun with Doom, couldn't care less about the story. And I feel
Doom
like
even have a story? I don't like it does, it's not there.
The original Doom Doom 2016, the original Doom is very old. Kind of did, but not really. And then in Doom Eternal, they tried to shoehorn a story in, and I was just like, I don't want this. Just let me kill things. And
they know what people are showing up for. Whatever. You just want to shoot stuff.
And so, like, I feel like they needed a reason for this game to be, and they gave it a story to kind of propel that. But, like, the story doesn't seem like it's going to matter all that much.
People are mainly going to be focused on the dating sim.
Maybe. Who knows? It's a really cool idea. Like I said, I definitely wrote it off before watching the trailer, and it looks really cool. So be sure to go check out Neon White. My choice is a little different. I guess it's kind of staying with the vein. I think we've all kind of chosen puzzle-y games. I want to talk about Storyteller really quick. Storyteller is a game, but this is a game that you're writing a story, right? And as an aspiring, whatever, screenwriter, novelist, whatever, that alone appeals to me, but it has a puzzle element, right? And the trailer for this game during the showcase was essentially just showing you little examples of how it would work. You basically are tasked with, you have to write a tragedy and you have a certain subset of settings, characters, and events to choose from. And you have to put those panels onto pages and write a story in like a kind of medieval looking book, like when, at the beginning of Shrek, when he's taking a dump and he's reading that book, it looks like that book basically. And I was really into this. It looks super, super simple. This is only going to be on Nintendo Switch and Steam. And it's like borderline a phone game.
Yeah, I was going to say, to me, it looked like a
might be a
game.
phone game.
And the one thing that I really hope that they don't do is I hope that somehow it all ties together. So in the trailer we saw, it looked like it's just many independent little tiny stories that
one-pagers.
That surmount to nothing. I'd really like to see if at the end of your entire storybook it kind of tells a story where it all connects.
Right. Or you're writing chapters would be one way to do it. Yeah, like you're writing chapters, and at the end, it's revealed to you that you've actually written a huge story. I would hope that what they showed in the trailer for this was introductory material, that it's going to get more complex. And like they got up to like 8 panels at one point, but they were going through it at one point too. I don't know if you guys noticed this in the trailer. They showed the first one at a pace where I could follow it, and then each subsequent one, it got faster and faster and faster until I was like, I can't even really see what you're doing anymore. Why are you showing me this?
And I wonder if that was
that
on purpose though, because like, I don't know, sometimes it's different when it's a game where you control like movement or you're shooting or something and it's more like skill based. But when it comes to puzzles, if you reveal too much in a trailer, then it's just like, well, I saw this part in the trailer, I know how to solve this, or I know what to do here.
Right.
I think this game could be a lot of fun sitting around the TV with somebody and kind of like almost ad-libbing it and just trying to come up with some ridiculous stuff.
I'm going to say with a drink in hand.
For sure. There's definitely it's a creative puzzle game. Like apparently there is a right answer. Otherwise it's not really a puzzle game, but like it kind of is also encouraging you to mess around with it. Right. And they show that again a couple of times in this trailer. They make really goofy panels that make no sense. And they're like, well, no, that's not going to work. But it can be funny. It can be interesting. It can put new ideas into your head about maybe story ideas that you have that are much larger. So I think it's a really cool concept. I'm looking forward to seeing where that one goes. That's a Switch buy for me. Again, assuming it looks like it's on the scale of a mobile game, this thing had better be like $10. Like, if it's more than that, I'm not going to be interested, to be clear. But if it's around that price point, I'm going to be into it. So, Storyteller from Annapurna, be on the lookout for that one as well. And be on the lookout for all the other Annapurna stuff. There was an Outer Wilds expansion announced, and a bunch of other games were talked about. We're not going to get to here. Again, some of which have already been mentioned in like E3 and other places. So feel free to go check out the Annapurna showcase. Let's get into what we've been up to. And let's start with Technic this week. Technic, how you been? What do you be?
So you guys all know that we have a dog. What you might not know is that we have a rabbit. And we learned something about this rabbit. Did you know that rabbits' teeth should be monitored because they can grow long in their mouth? So always monitor their teeth. We had to get his little teeth cut today.
Ah!
Yeah.
You cut them?
Well, the vet cut them. But it's so people, if you have a rabbit, make sure to like open up your rabbit's mouth and really look, because they can bend inward where it's tough to see. And so this has been my public service announcement to be mindful of your rabbit's teeth.
To like the one rabbit owner that listens to Online Warriors. That's a very left field PSA, but I'm here for it.
But he's got them trimmed. As soon as they cut them, he started licking out of pure happiness. He's really good. He's really excited. The other update that I wanted to cover is we watched the movie Freaky, and not scary.
We talked about this last week.
We did?
We didn't talk about watching it, but we were talking about it in relation to like slasher movies and the lack thereof almost.
Yep.
And so this came on HBO Max, I think last week, and it was a perfect time then to sit down and actually watch it.
And I have to say, I don't think you'll enjoy it.
Wow. Okay. That's upsetting. That's not what I was expecting to hear at all.
It's not very scary, and they don't know what kind of slasher they want to be. So like there's like the voodoo type slasher, then there's the standard serial killer type slasher, and I don't think they could really pick. They like half-assed eat both of them.
See, I disagree. I thought this movie was actually a lot of fun. Like, you can't take it seriously. It's very clearly meant to be like a funny slasher trope movie. Like, it's kind of funny, kind of like... There are some jump scares. I know Technic jumped a couple times. There are definitely some jump scares. It wasn't like super scary, but like it was kind of like Scream or a Scary Movie version of Scream. You know how Scary Movie came out to like kind of make fun of and mock Scream in the first place?
Yeah.
It kind of felt like that. I think the thing that impressed me was the acting, because you have Vince Vaughn. Like, Technic didn't do a good sell on this movie. Essentially, it's
Does
basically...
he still got it?
Who? Technic or Vince Vaughn?
No, Vince Vaughn. Does Vince Vaughn still got it?
He does.
Vince Vaughn was a big deal back in the day, man. He was great.
So the sell of this movie that Technic neglected is basically you're taking your slasher movie, you're taking your Scream, your teen slasher movie. It takes place in a high school, and you're mixing it with Freaky Friday. And in this case, Vince Vaughn is the serial killer, and he switches place with a young girl, Catherine Newton. So they switch bodies.
Yeah, the girl from
lots of stuff lately, yeah. And so they switch places, and they have 24 hours basically to switch back, or they're going to be permanently in each other's bodies. So obviously, you have Vince Vaughn having to kind of mimic the mannerisms of a teenage girl, and Catherine Newton has to kind of pull off this very, stoic, dark serial killer type visage, while also having to play like their actual age-appropriate characters at the tail end and bookend of the movie. And the fact that they're able to easily switch into those roles and pull it off very convincingly was, in my opinion, a pretty good acting feat. Like, they were very convincing and believable.
Well, duly noted. Yeah, I might, if I'm in a certain mood, I could see myself watching that movie, certainly. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm going to go see it right now, but good to know. What about you? Technic, I'm assuming your update is finito.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
no further comment. Yeah, go ahead.
my update is still making progress on my little Bulbasaur planter. Got a base coat down. It's looking very good. I decided to go the paint pen route for all the detail work. I was originally going to try taking like a little paintbrush and try to do detail work, and that is not going to happen. I discovered that I'm not very good at using paintbrushes. Like
Painting is
it's hard.
Well, one time my fiance and I, she was my girlfriend at the time, we went to this pottery painting place, and I was so excited. I was like, I'm gonna paint a Spider-Man mug, and holy crap, painting is so hard. It's you don't realize until you do it. It's the hardest thing to do. Just paint with like little brushes and like paint in like little lines. I was like trying to make like the Spider-Man logo. Oh my god, it's impossible. So yeah, I feel you on that.
And so while I haven't been working on that, I've also been, playing around with my guitar. I think I mentioned a few weeks ago or whatever that I kind of picked it back up a little bit. I was kind of inspired by the Rocksmith Plus announcement just to kind of see if I could get back into it, if I would even want to use that service. And I picked up a musician subscription again, and I've used this app before in the past. And basically, it's kind of like the same premise of like a Rock Band type thing, but they show you like tabs and stuff, and they teach you how to play. And there's lessons, like video lessons, and then like it listens to your guitar to see if you match the notes correctly as they go across your screen, so you pick up skills. And I've always been kind of like a chord guitar player, and so I'm trying to actually pick up like electric lead guitar sort of things, and it's hard. That is also very hard. Painting and guitar, both two very hard things that I've discovered.
Right. Yeah. I still just kind of play the guitar on and off, but haven't really made strong steps to like get better in a while. I just kind of like to just, fiddle with it a lot of the time. But maybe someday I'll get back into that. But it sounds like a lot of self-improvement stuff going on over there. A lot of fun hobbies. A lot of cool little projects.
Yeah.
So, right on with that.
Tinkering with Tech Chick.
It's coming, folks. Here we go. I want to shout out one show that my fiance and I started watching called Full Bloom on HBO Max. So I talked about the Great Pottery Throwdown on this show before and how much I loved it. And I know I got some Twitter love for like people are like, this show's great. Guess what? It is great. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Full Bloom, which is a little bit like the florist version of Great Pottery Throwdown, and also like the florist version of like the Great British Baking Show. They're all the same, cut from the same cloth. I think this show is actually technically like American, like all the contestants are American. One of the judges is British, but one of the judges of every show is British, so it just makes sense. And it's exactly what it sounds like. They're creating like floral arrangements and like these big things that like to impress judges, and like they're on teams a lot of the time, and they're literally just like making big things with flowers. Sounds weird, but it's very, very pleasant in the same way that those other shows that I mentioned are. It's streaming for free on HBO Max. So I would recommend checking that one out. That's one update. And then the other update, kind of a PSA, not about cutting rabbit teeth, because my goodness. But if you haven't tried this or if you haven't done it in a while, I recommend doing it. I do this activity, I would say once in a blue moon.
Gross.
I don't think I've done it in the past year. I think I did it last year at one point because it was a good pandemic thing. Go fishing. Went fishing with my fiance and her father. Shout out to my fiance's father. Over the weekend, my most successful fishing trip ever. I caught, I think, 5 or 6 fish, which for me is unheard of. I rarely catch more than one when I go fishing, and sometimes I don't catch anything. That's how fishing goes. But
what kind of fish?
Just like bluegill, just like in a pond, We weren't like, wrangling marlin or anything. It was a lot of fun. Good way to sit there and try to de-stress and decompress and kind of just do nothing and be in nature. So definitely recommend fishing in your spare time if you have the spare time. And the water, you need water to fish. Otherwise, where are you fishing? I suppose you could ice fish, but I don't know if we have any like Arctic Circle listeners, but that's my mini PSA, which means that we are now at quiz time. And the quiz topic this week is John Mayer. And I don't know if this was chosen because it was known that I like John Mayer. I think Nerdbomber sometimes tailors the topic choices for our producers based on who the host is.
You're welcome.
John Mayer, I'm actually like, it's kind of funny. I do like him. I have a bit of a love-hate thing with him a lot of the time because I like his early stuff a lot. And we're going to talk about some of his early stuff because that's what I like the most about him. His more recent stuff, I'm not super into, but we can dive into, my personal issues with John Mayer another time. But let's talk about John Mayer in a more quizish sense. I have 6 questions and a bonus in front of me. And they're all numerical. You know how it goes. So we're going to start with Nerdbomber. Give Technic a bit of a leg up here. Although there are 6 questions, so there's no advantage for going first. When was John Mayer born? You know John Mayer.
I'm trying to remember. I feel like I know how old he is. I think he's in his 40s, maybe 50. I'm going to say in 1980.
I'm going to say
Technic.
1984.
Okay, we got a double bust to start. 1977. He's 43 years old.
It looks great.
So you were right. He's in his 40s. You should have gone a little bit lower. October 16th, 1977. So that's how old he is. With that in mind, and I'm going to keep the 2 kind of year-based questions next to each other. His debut album, Room for Squares, which, by the way, is a fantastic album. Why Georgia, Bodies of Wonderland, No Such Thing. I could go on. When was his debut album, Room for Squares, released? And Technic, you'll start this one.
I'm gonna go 2000 on the nose.
I think it was earlier than that. I think that only gives me a short window.
Hey.
I'm going to say 1990, but I think it's like the 1996 range.
June 5th, 2001. It was actually first released then online only and then re-released when he signed with a major label in September of that year. So Technic hit it almost right on the nose. He is on the board. Let's stick with Room for Squares. I mentioned Your Body is a Wonderland. Everyone remembers that song. Come on. Your Body is a Wonderland. Where did it peak on the Billboard Hot 100?
I don't think it hit number 1. I'm going to say 4.
Which way is busting?
Yeah, I didn't think about that before asking the question. We'll say if you're too low, you busted. Because I feel like that's what makes sense, And Nerdbomber, I'll allow you to re-answer if you want to recalibrate your answer.
If I'm too low, I busted. Okay,
If you're too low, you busted.
I'm going to say 10 then with that in mind.
I'm going to say 1. It's a safe guess. That philosophy.
No, if you're too low, you busted. It's the least safe guess.
Do you mean low on the billboards?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're lower than the number.
Is high on the billboards. Do you guys not know what low means?
I meant a low number. Nerdbomber, you knew what I meant, right?
I did. Yeah, that's why I adjusted it to a lower.
So that gives me no buffer if I pick one. I got you now.
Right.
I'm going to go 20 then.
All right, 18. So in spite of all the confusion, Technic gets the point.
I'm going to lose to Technic again? Are we serious?
No,
Technic again.
I start off hot, remember? Then you come back.
Yeah.
It's a tie. Yeah, you win in overtime.
Well, you have 2 points. There are 3 questions to go, so it might not even be a tie. Let's just see what happens here. Now, this is a loose number. This is one of those questions where it's like over some number. How many guitars does he own? According to Wikipedia, he owns over some number of guitars. I'm assuming that number is close to the actual number he owns, so we're just looking for that number. How many guitars does John Mayer own?
17.
Oh, it's more than this. I'm going to say 30, but I think it's way more than that.
Yeah, it's over 200. He collects guitars, and he's, pretty rich because he's John Mayer. So, Nerdbomber, you're on the board. It's now 2-1. The prophecy it's as the prophecy is foretold. How many studio albums has John Mayer released? Not EP, not any of that nonsense. Studio albums.
I think there's 5 studio albums. The rest are EPs.
I don't like how confident you were. I'm going to go ahead and say 6 because someone's got to do a plus 1.
What a jerk.
He's done it, folks. 8 studio albums. I'm going to read them here for you. He used the +1 trick, and it was dirty, but, he's got to do what he's got to do at this point. So his first studio album, as I mentioned, was Room for Squares in 2001. Continuum is my personal favorite.
I had a big Continuum phase.
Continuum, oh my God, it's such a good album. Heavier Things, Paradise Valley, Battle Studies, Born and Raised, Sob Rock.
I forgot about Battle Studies.
You guys want to know how much I listened to John Mayer when he came on the radio?
Oh, you know what? I was reading from the wrong thing.
The wrong guy won this one. Just saying.
Room Room for Squares, Heavier Things, Continuum, Battle Studies, Born and Raised, Paradise Valley, The Search for Everything, and Sob Rock. So yeah, Born and Raised is pretty much when I got off the train because then he went all like bluegrass and weird. But the other 4 before that are all fantastic albums. I strongly recommend all of them. Continuum in particular was like chef's kiss situation. Just unbelievably good album. Probably my top 5. Okay, well, Nerdbomber has lost. We can go through the last 2. I'll just read you the answers to the last 2 questions. We're pretty well over time here. He has won 7 Grammys. So I don't know. Take from that what you will. I would actually have thought it would have been more than that, but he's only won 7. And he has sold over 17 million records. So Technic, you've done it again, my friend. I have to give you a lot of credit. You've bounced back in a pretty phenomenal way here. 6 and 8. Nerdbomber at 8 and 6. I am at 11 and 2. So next week I will be taking on Nerdbomber. And Technic, just you're climbing that ladder, my friend. Again, credit where credit is due. You're doing it. We're all very proud. So yeah, next week, Nerdbomber versus myself. More news, more laughs. One of us may have added a number to our name. Who knows? Time will tell, I suppose. We want to thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with us to the end. Thank you for hitting us up on Twitter. Handles already mentioned. And maybe leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'd love to hear your feedback. You know, who's your favorite warrior, etc. Whatever you want to make it, we'll read it. As far as who to tell,
Your guitar teacher.
Tell your guitar teacher. Tell him or her. Head to your local music store, and while you're plucking away, say, "Hey, I have this podcast recommendation for you." I'm sure they'll be receptive. We'll see you next week. Thanks for being here.